Hi, it's me, the sickly Victorian child of classical music. So back in the 80s, this little white boy decided to make a freaky musical about felines. You might have heard of it. It became massively successful, yet somehow at the same time one of the most controversial musicals in Broadway history. The reason why it's controversial is because the story is told a little bit differently. It's not like most musicals where you get the protagonist and then the I Want song and a classic hero's journey where they beat the bad guy. In Cats, you get all the plot at the very beginning, and then it's mostly just 2 hours of cats. You get a read on all of their personalities and what makes each of the cats unique, all while they're at the Jellicle Ball and choosing which one of them gets to die by the end of the evening. Until at the very end, we actually get a song from Grisabella, the outcast cat, and they end up picking her to be the one to die. Sideways makes the argument that the story of Cats is actually told backwards, where you start off with all the antagonists singing about why they're so great, and then at the very end you get the protagonist and you learn their ambitions and their life goals and their dreams and everything. Andrew Lloyd Webber didn't realize it at the time, but he was starting a new genre of musical called the roll call musical. A roll call musical is a musical where the plot is secondary to the introduction and development of the characters. The plot of Cats doesn't change, like the same shit that they're talking about like 3 songs in still applies at the end of the show and nothing changes. The show is literally just introducing and getting to know a bunch of different cats. Obviously a concept for storytelling that is very stupid on paper, yet in recent years with musical theater becoming increasingly democratized and with avant-garde art becoming all the more popular, roll call musicals have become increasingly common. For example, Ride the Cyclone. Ride the Cyclone is a musical about a bunch of high schoolers who get on a roller coaster that ends up crashing and they all die. And then in Purgatory, they meet with this animatronic fortune teller guy and he tells them that only one of them can go back to life. It's surprisingly pretty similar to Cats. We get a read on all the different characters and their personalities before the choice is made of which one gets to go back. There's a girl named Ocean who's really snobby and an overachiever, and she basically says everyone else serves zero purpose and should give someone else a piece of that ozone. So she thinks naturally she should be the one chosen to go back to life. Then there's Noel Gruber, who just fantasizes about being a sex worker in the old-fashioned days. He wants to be a French hooker. Then there's Mishka Baczynski, who's a Ukrainian rapper, and he just sings about how awesome his life is and how he really likes this girl named Talia. Then there's Ricky Potts, the most imaginative boy in town, and he fantasizes about going to distant galaxies and having sex with Catwoman. There's Jane Doe, who was fucking beheaded in the accident, and so she doesn't know who she is, and no one else knows who she is either. And then there's Constance, who said that she'd previously lived a life of self-loathing, yet as she was about to die, she felt a profound sense of love and learned how to live. She finally learned what life was all about right as the accident was happening and as she was about to die. They picked Jane Doe, which I think is infuriatingly stupid. Like, Constance's song is about how she finally learned how to appreciate life, and they picked the one who they don't even know who the fuck is. Like, what if Jane Doe is a cunt during her life? You'd rather bring her back than someone who just gave this like heart-wrenching song about what it means to be alive? But anyways, this musical operates much in the same way as Cats. You know, we get the plot at the beginning. Kids in Purgatory just died, they get to pick one who goes back, and the entire rest of the show is just introducing and learning about all the different kids. Another roll call musical that has been successful recently is Octet. I'm not totally sure Octet really counts as a musical. It's more of a performance, I guess, but it's still very good. It's written by Dave Malloy, who's the same guy who wrote Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812, which is the musical about war and peace. And this musical is entirely a cappella. As the title suggests, Octet, this is an 8-person a cappella show, and it's about addiction to social media, video games, just modern technology in general. The setting is a kind of support group, so all the people present in the support group are addicted and they're kind of there to get help. And the musical is really just introducing each of the people, the type of addiction that they have, and what caused it. You know, there's a woman who's addicted to doom scrolling because a video of her freaking out on some poor minimum wage worker went viral. There's a dude who's addicted to video games because of the dopamine hit he gets whenever he unlocks new shit in the video game. There's the punk rock emo kid who's addicted to political doom scrolling, so much so that he completely dissociates with life itself and his entire life becomes online political discourse. And then finally at the very end, we get a girl who is kind of ugly and a social outcast in real life, but met a very close friend through technology. So like Cats and Ride the Cyclone, you kind of get the good part at the very end. And you know, the moral of the show is live your life. Dave Malloy treats doom scrolling and addiction in this sense as a very real medical issue and essentially says it's not worth it. You know, insomnia, anxiety, depression, all that, all for something that at the end of the day isn't enhancing or adding meaning to your own life or experiences. So the premise sounds like a boomer musical, you know, technology bad, but it's much deeper than that. And you know, it's not technology bad entirely because you do see people who use technology like that fat ugly girl in a very positive way, but you know, just live your life, man. By the way, the vocal work of this show is gorgeous. It is phenomenal. You think entirely a cappella shit, especially in musicals, just won't work. Dave Malloy is a genius. It is so good. So why do roll call musicals work? At the end of the day, probably because they're musicals. You know, say if it were a play, for example, of just people going up and introducing themselves, that would be fucking boring. That's basically what real life is. But music is a very interesting way to introduce and develop a character. Their genre, their style of music and everything can tell you a lot about their personality. And it's always more fun when there's music. And most of these musicals still follow a conflict resolution kind of story structure, even if it's not the hero's journey. These musicals kind of all start out with premise, you know, like Ride the Cyclone, these kids are dead, one of them is going to be chosen to go back to life. In Octet, the premise is all of these people are addicted to social media and technology. Let's explore what that addiction entails and if there are any positives to come out of it. And in all of these musicals, the quote-unquote best possible outcome is saved for the very end. In Cats, Grisabella is chosen to be the cat to be reborn. In Ride the Cyclone, we get Constance learn how to appreciate life, and we get Jane Doe who gets to return to life. In Octet, we see people who learn how to use social media and the internet in a positive way, and how to live your life to the fullest in an age where it's very easy to get distracted, addicted, and anxious. Kind of like Sideways argues, it's a very familiar storytelling format but flipped around. You get the bad guys in the conflict first, and then you get the good guys and their ambitions at the end. I'm sure I'm probably missing some roll call musicals, and I'd like to learn about more. So do tell me if you know of any that I'm missing. And I do think that this genre of musical will continue. I think Cats is going to have a lot more of a profound impact on musical theater than we realized 40 years ago. Please remember to subscribe and drop any recommendations you have in the comments. But until next time, thank you and break legs.